Welcome to the Brandinc PR Podcast, where we dive deep into the stories and strategies of today's most impactful entrepreneurs, business leaders, and professionals. Whether you're building your brand, scaling your business, or just looking for inspiration, you're in the right place. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Brandinc PR Podcast, your go-to space for all things media, branding, and the magic behind public relations. I'm your host, Brandi Sims, and today we're diving deep into the art of powerful presence, messaging, and how to truly own the room, whether that room is a TV studio, boardroom, or main stage. Joining me is someone whose resume reads like a masterclass in modern media. Today, I've got Alison Deyette, and who is a media training powerhouse with 20 years of experience in front of and behind the camera. She's coached everyone from NFL athletes to CEOs to creatives under global brands like Meta and the Virgil Abloh Foundation. She's also worked as an on-camera expert across The Kelly Clarkson Show, Good Morning America, Extra, and The View. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on how great communicators are made. So let's jump right in. Welcome, Alison.
Thank you. That was a beautiful introduction. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We do our best. Love to hear it. All right. So let's dive right in. You have an incredible blend of experience from media training, journalism, on-air hosting, and strategy. What was the moment you realized you wanted to specialize in training others on how to communicate effectively?
It came about naturally. It was not an intended plan. It wasn't initially my path, I'll say. It just happened that I was doing so much on-air work and so many brands were coming to collaborate with me and write their scripting, create their messaging, have me relook at their branding, and wanted me to be the face that eventually they said, we love how you share our message. We love how you interact with an audience, whether live and in person or whether on camera or during, say, a print interview contribution. So they said, could you do the same thing for our executive, for our CEO? Or we have an actor that we want to pair with us. And then suddenly I was like, yes, I could certainly translate this. And I started meeting with people one-on-one. And from there, I started getting more people through referrals. And the next thing you know, I'm working with an actress for a press junket or working with a brand with an actor, and they want some authentic connection about how, if they're going to go on television, how are they going to weave in the story about our brand and how it helps them personally, and that's their connection, how it might help others. The sports figures has been a real joy for me because I'm quite athletic myself, and just having various agencies and management firms reach out to me to media train their NFL rookies and their NBA rookies has been a joy because those guys and those women, they're very much focused and driven. But because when I'm working with them, we'll do group sessions and one-on-one, and it's enlightening to see, and I love seeing them being able to be vulnerable. Like in a group, they're big and rough or tough, but on their own, they're willing to be vulnerable and look for that safe and supportive space for me. So it's been a joy because I still work on television. I still contribute to lots of different press, but the media training space, I like to say, Brandi, that it fills up my cup with joy because there's something about saying, how can I serve you? So you say it better and you shine. And then I get that awesome chance to see how they change, how they transform, how they be ultimately more confident, whether, as you've said, whether they're on a stage, whether they're in a boardroom making a pitch, whether they're just on the court after a basketball game and just speaking better about how they made that layup.
Oh, I love that. I love that. It sounds like you found your niche, you found your space.
Yes.
And it wasn't something that was forced. It's just something that came naturally for you. And you just fell into this and made it what it is today. That's incredible. I love that.
Right.
I think those are the best kinds, is the ones that you just naturally flow right into it and getting into that particular training space. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Right. So your approach focuses on transparency, authenticity, which you just touched on, and identifying those blind spots. Can you walk us through what a typical coaching session looks like when working with, say, a pro athlete versus a brand spokesperson?
So, for example, an athlete, because everything is curated to the person because everybody's different, everybody's lifestyle and professions are different. So first off, I do a deep dive on who that person is. If it is one-on-one, so we'll give that as an example, one-on-one, I will do a deep dive in their socials, find out if they have a website, if they've done podcast interviews, do they have a YouTube channel, watch some videos, anything that they can share with me that they can say, Alison, this is how I have been expressing myself. And anything I can additionally find, which also I love to be able to surprise clients. It's like, how did you know about that? Where did you find that? And I said, well, it's my job to learn as much as I can about you so I can come to you and say, here's the feedback that's going to build you up. So I can be that supportive space for you, that can the ultimate encourager. And then we start a lot of times with a conversation, because for me, it's never about talking at someone. It's about how do we communicate together? And sometimes all the clients say, have we started yet? And I said, yes, because I'm trying to learn about the cadence in your talk, your intonation. Because sometimes women will end up on a high note, almost as if a question on their sentence. And we look for how do we create a period at the end of the sentence? Do people run off in tangents when they're telling a story? And so we'll start there and I'll start giving the feedback. And then it might be role-playing scenarios. So I will ask them lots of questions that they never expected. And I'll challenge them. And then we look for those chances when I'm challenging them, helping them guide them to pivot and deflect without shutting down a conversational flow. Because there's sometimes you'll see, say, an athlete who will be in an interview and some sports reporter will ask them questions and they're like, no, and they'll just shut it down. So we look for ways that they can still make a connection, because you want to be written about in a positive way. So we look for ways that you can, people are clapping back more, and I applaud many people for calling people out for inappropriate questions, all for that. But on the flip side, when there's ones that you should be able to answer, but we look for ways so we're not shutting it all down. And then sometimes I put them on camera so they can see themselves. We'll do various scenarios of, I want you seated, I want you standing, so I can get a sense of what their body language is like. When they're seated in a chair, if they're on a chair that has wheels, do they swivel, which can show off nervousness? When they're standing, do they weave? Do they bring their weight on different feet? So we look for how do we find that solid space? And ultimately, I want to help them not only just say it better, move sometimes the litter language, the likes and you knows out of their life. I'm never going to remove it completely, and a lot of people are unconscious of it, but we look for ways to diminish it. And I'm also looking for their stories, because that's the way people connect. That's the way, say, someone's watching that athlete and that athlete shares a story about their own upbringing or their own evolution in the game. And someone was like, oh, yeah, that kind of sounds like me. And when people feel that they can connect to you in some way, or just be totally like, I'm inspired or I'm motivated or, oh, I'm still your number one fan because of what you told me, then I know that I have accomplished my task. And a lot of people just feel like they don't have stories. So a lot of my questioning, we build out those stories and we look for ways that you're not the boring interviewer. We look for the questions that are going to navigate you. And ultimately, I want my clients, whether it's an athlete or a brand expert, to be able to have their message, control their narrative, and be able to share it like that. I want someone, if they come up to you, Brandi, and say, Brandi, tell me about yourself. Or if you're working with a collaboration, how do you do it? I want people to be able to pull it out of their back pocket and be so smooth and eloquent with it. It's as if they've known about it their whole time.
That's how you make the impact. Now, these coaching sessions are very, very much tailored towards the individual and really embracing their authenticity, but just adding a little polish, I think, to it.
Right.
And
Right.
enhancing it even further. That's what makes the difference. Yeah, I absolutely love that one. Okay, so let's talk shop for a minute.
Okay.
You and I both work on shaping how stories are told. And lately, there have been some real case studies worth dissecting. So, one that stood out more recently for me was that, the WNBA's media blitz between and surrounding Caitlin Clark and Angela Reese, which has obviously sparked a lot of headlines. There's been a ton of brand deals between the two. And
Right.
of course, there's commentary on race, representation, and just women's visibility in sports. What did you think of how their respective teams handled the press, both the wins, but also like the stumbles?
Well, I would say, I think what I find with many of the women and the athletes that I've worked with is we would all like to get beyond one, women focused. We'd like to be able to just say, I'm a damn good athlete. So that's kind of one of the things we will focus on is, well, we all know underpaid, and they thrive basically on the sponsorships. But many of the female athletes will say, we would love to get to a space where we just say, we are an amazing athlete. And the focus isn't always on being the woman athlete, the female athlete. We would like to coincide because, as we know, like the WNBA playoffs we're skyrocketing the viewership. Yep. And like, it's about time. So I think there's that. And then I think the media itself will sometimes create the stories, must not like each other. Oh, they must be in competition. I mean, first off, the rivalry. First off, let's plain and simple. It's competition. When you're playing a game, it's competition. You are in rivalries. You are fighting on the court. You are trying to make the basket. You are trying to win the game. It doesn't mean that you have to, as the media, translate it so much off the court as well. Instead, it'd be great if the media instead looked for old stereotypical rivalries and instead said, these are two fantastic athletes and let's watch them ascend.
100%.
So if I can do any of that, if I can help another athlete have that messaging to deliver to someone when after the game or in another interview elsewhere, then again, that's trying to change the old messaging.
That is a stunning approach. And certainly something I think, and maybe some of our WNBA PR pros are hanging in and listening to this episode, but I do hope that is something that we see moving forward, is just that exact approach is how are we navigating that storytelling and how are we being on top of these things and being the ones that are positioning it as opposed to everyone kind of positioning it, I guess, for themselves and creating that narrative, which I understand media, it has its role. We need to create more stories. But this is where I think
there's the clickbait part of it. It's the clickbait part of it. Who's going to tune in? How do we get someone to read the article, watch the story? And as we know, we don't see a lot of that. We don't see that in men's sports. And if you do, it's those guys are rough and tough. They were mad about it. And then it's done. Then they go and get a beer kind of thing. But they put so much weight on what they believe is the emotional aspect for female athletes, and they really need to take that out. And if the female athletes can start saying, listen, stop putting that weight on us. We're here to play a game, and we're also here to ascend in our careers. So just tell it like it is. Yes. We're damn good at what we do.
That is a whole mic drop, because they are. And I'm so glad that there's more visibility in women's sports. And eventually we're going to get to the point where it's just sports, guys. It's just sports. They are darn good athletes that are competing at a high level. That's something that we should all equally be celebrating. It doesn't matter what the gender is, right? So we've also seen an uptick in brand messaging fallout, like Target's response to backlash over protests and pride merchandise, or Shein's influencer trip that was meant to fix its image, but arguably it backfired. We saw a lot from that one. So how do you approach media training when a client needs to communicate during controversy? And what do you think was missing from these campaigns where they had this big fallout over the backlash and how it was presented in their comms?
Well, I think part of it also just comes from some brands when they think that they're I'm going to back up into this. So what's frustrating to me is all these corporations' responses believing that they should remove the DEI aspect of their businesses and say, oh, it's because the government told us. There are ways that you can still contribute and support. And instead, how about just say, we sell great brands, rather than we're going to take some of these things off our shelves. We can't do this anymore. And instead get back to just, this is fabulous brands, and give them equal weight on the store shelves. And what happens, I find in some brands are like, oh, we're so sorry you feel that way. That's one of the worst lines that you can give back in a crisis situation, because you're not taking any responsibility for your actions. And instead, you should be taking a look of how you're presented yourself to your audience. I mean, in the Shein, we also know it's a lot of cheap clothing, a lot of inexpensive clothing. You go on that website. Yeah, it's all fast fashion. But almost, can I even say faster fashion? I find it difficult to actually even shop I've seen that website. It's difficult shop. There's so much on there.
The
And
type A in
it's
me gets stressed out immediately.
me too. Me too, Brandi.
Just
It
like
totally
there's a
does.
lot of stimuli. Where
Right,
am I
right.
looking?
And there's no consistency in the look of it. So, I mean, I applaud people who said, I was one of those who just stopped shopping at Target. And I was like, if we can, if what we're doing can make an impact for them to elicit change, great. Sometimes that's what it takes. I'm all for activism. I've had that hit home when like the dollars and cents of it is, I work with an organization called Step Up, and we work with girls and young women from about 14 to 29, helping them navigate to the destination they want to go. And it's
Mm.
girls or those who identify as. And I've been a part of it since 2012 as a mentor, working with these girls and young women and really helping them to find that destination and giving them the tools, because a lot of them come from under-resourced neighborhoods. And we found that we lost $700,000 in funding this year because of the changes in the administration. Unfortunately, we lost some of our federal funding and grants, and we lost some of our corporate donors because they said, since you don't help boys too, we had to pull back our funding. And it's just sad because there's so many organizations out there. So to target those based on your skin color, your ethnicity, or your gender, we're all just trying to help people get along and start climbing that ladder. And there are plenty out there for boys. There's nothing wrong with that. But also, what's wrong with having ones that help girls too?
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
really and
So it's
truly.
hard to sit back and say, why are you taking away from here just because they haven't helped boys? The organization has been around for a long time, and we're making a difference, as are many organizations making a difference. Don't take away the funding when it's only helping people towards a stronger path.
And that's the unfortunate part. That's the unfortunate part is in losing $700 million, 700 million,
700,000, not 700 million,
700,000.
700,000.
Okay. I added some zeros, my bad.
Yeah, that's
But
okay.
it's still a lot. 700,000 is a lot
Yes,
of money
yes,
to do good work and to help
right.
someone. And it makes me sad when I hear cases like this, because when you lose that funding, it's almost like my mind immediately goes to the breakdown of what that means. $700,000, how many people that could have impacted now we can't
Yes,
impact,
right.
like
And
that's
we've realized that we will not be able to help at least 300 girls. And these
um,
are, girls in high schools, and we do after school programs and weekend programs, giving them the tools and the skills and the knowledge from mentors like myself and all kinds of industry. We give them that chance to explore what they might want to do in life. If they're going to college, if they're going to some kind of trade school, or if they're diving in early and getting, internships just to explore what they might want to do. And so the same thing when it comes back to brands, if I'm working with a brand, it's that same deep dive. I'm looking, have they had crisis situations in the past? Who's representing them? Who's that person? How are they speaking it? And we look for ways to make sure whatever they're saying is helping others. And if their storytelling matches, and who is their audience? Who are they trying to reach? And how can we build that reach, expand on their reach, so they're not just talking to one tiny audience?
mm, that is so much good advice that you just shared here. And I hope that those that are listening are, one, taking notes, okay? And I know I'm taking mental notes here, but really honing all of this in and adjusting their approach. Or honestly, it's okay to throw out what you're doing now if it has not been effective, but really listening to all of this that you're sharing and applying that in a real tangible way into that strategy, so that when crisis, which I always say is crisis is on the horizon, you may not be getting hit now, but you may, and you want to be prepared. Okay. So you've worked with powerhouse organizations like Planned Parenthood, Meta, and the Virgil Abloh Foundation, kind of tying into what we were mentioning earlier about some of those civic groups and those nonprofits and those that have really, really strong causes. So without giving too much away, could you
Mhm.
share just a favorite project or success story that really highlights how your training changed the trajectory of a client's public presence?
Well, first of all, Planned Parenthood Federation is incredibly near and dear to my heart. left. I mean, if someone were saying, what is one of your areas of activism? It would be women's reproductive rights. And working with several of the women there has just been joyful. And it's as if I will gladly continue with them, just because if they need a shout out, if they need a quick session, if they want a longer session, I'm like, I will find the time, because it is such a worthy, valuable, important organization. And the women there are just, and some of the women, actually, one of my clients from there, she was originally in New York. She originally worked in magazines. We had unknowingly crossed paths many years ago when I worked in magazines full time. So we had that great little foundation, and it kind of became like, old home week, sharing stories. But for some of them, just being able to help them find their confidence of how they then share the messaging that is so important for those organizations, so they can shut down the defiers, shut down the naysayers, and be able to say, this is why this organization is so important. And we look for those. We also look for the terms and the phrases that help connect people. And for many cases with those, it is the stories. So when I've worked with several of them there, but one specifically, when we talked about how she's speaking on a stage, and I said, let's stop the vagueness. Big numbers are important, because you want to hear about how it's affecting 3 million women across the country who are coming from not necessarily a clinic that for them was maybe 20 minutes away. And now if it's defunded, they're going to have to drive 3 hours to a hospital. People don't have time like that in their day to drive 3 hours one way, 3 hours back, especially if they're pregnant and they need continuous care. And then we talk the big numbers, and we talk about the stories, because as we know, even on social media, when you hear that someone is bleeding out in a parking lot, you get mad. And you're like, how do I affect change? So we look for the stories, and not for the stories that are the stories that are like so sad, the stories of why it's important and why we do to affect change, and how can we move you to maybe call your senators, your congressmen, your state senates, just to say, please understand this is affecting me. So if we can tell you stories of others that you, knowing that you've been in similar circumstances, or maybe we'll make a call, send an email, or also look for what are your other resources going to be without them. And we just find so many times I've had them call me and say, you were in my head, Alison. Sometimes the greatest compliment is when they'll say, oh my gosh, Alison, you were in my head the whole time. I could hear you supporting me or encouraging me or helping me with that message point. And then when I land it, I'm like, oh, Alison would be so proud. Or Alison helped me change that messaging so it had more impact, or it had more punch to it, or it had more richness, or even to the point where I'll tell people sometimes they have the greatest story, the greatest message. I'm like, sometimes just say it a little quieter and hope that people lean in to hear it. Because for me, I will tell people, ultimately, a great interview or a great speech isn't always about, you don't always remember what the interview asked. You don't even always remember what the person answered or what they said on a stage. You know it made impact by the feeling it left with you. And if you walk out of a conference where you just heard someone speak, or if you turned on the TV and listened to someone, and you can turn to your partner, your spouse, or a friend and say, oh my God, did you know about this person? They just told great stories, or I'm really motivated or inspired. And whether they might share the story that was similar to yours and that's what elicited a change, or if they just said, that made me feel better, or they moved me, that's when you know you did well.
That's
and the Virgil Abloh Foundation for me has been really fabulous, because Virgil Abloh was a designer. Well, first of all, he wasn't just a fashion designer. He was an architect. He was a DJ. He was an artist. I mean, his line was, I'm doing this as an older man. I'm doing this for my 17-year-old self. So when he died, his wife took over and they continued their foundation where they were giving funds and grants to other people to complete their projects, to complete their fashion shows. So the new executive director, had worked with the Obama Foundation for many years, helped My Brother's Keeper start when Obama was in the White House. So she's there to help build that organization. And for me, just being a part in a small way of helping her deliver the message to raise funds so underserved youths in Chicago, just as a start, and then they want to go fully nationally to get access to the arts in all kinds of ways. It's not as if they might want to be a fashion designer. They might want to go into marketing and graphic design or AI, but just giving them the opportunity to meet others who have already been accomplished, to learn what was your path, what were your hurdles, what were the stumbling blocks, is so gratifying and helpful to a young person. So for me to be able to know that my small part has been for those people in those organizations to lead with great messaging, that I was just there to help them polish it, strengthen it, or find the stories that connected, is incredibly gratifying and complimentary when I know that they can come back and say it worked.
Yes, yes. Well, certainly when you have those folks that do come back and say, you know what, this really changed my life and this really set the path for me, and just getting that almost validation of it, you're on the right track.
Mm-hmm.
It lets you know that you are on the right track and you're doing
Right.
the work that is needed and so
Yeah.
helpful for others. So that thank you for sharing that. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So beautiful. So let's talk industry, and given your
Okay.
background in editorial and media, how are you seeing traditional outlets like the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal evolving when it comes to storytelling and branding?
Well, they've certainly also had their own bit of backlash as well, because people will call them out on some writers that get a little too much in their own head, let's say, or not
Yes.
reporting it accurately, people believe. And also just overall, we're losing people. The entertainment industry and media industry, my husband who develops television shows, we say there's the slow demise or the slow collapse of it all. People
Mm-hmm.
have moved off linear and they're streaming now. People have moved off of, I can tell you, I recall I used to love opening the paper on a Sunday. That was just a coffee and the New York Times when I lived in New York City. It was like, that was my Sunday morning. And same thing with in LA. And now we're all on our phones reading everything. And we have the various news apps that we're reading and the scrolling function. I find more actually with media. I'm moving a lot to Substack. I'm finding that the writers that I
Mm.
follow who have been in those traditional organizations, media organizations, I find with Substack, I can get more content, and I can get it if I want on a daily basis, all in their niches. So for example, I somehow follow a lot of Jessicas. I follow a woman, Jessica Yellen, on Substack, who has News Not Noise. I follow another woman, Jessica Valenti, who does a Substack called Abortion Every Day. And all she does is cover what's going on in the States. And for me, with my work with Planned Parenthood, that helps me relay their message and help them with how they share back, just because I'm better informed. I also follow Dr. Jessica Krupnik, who is a doctor and a nutritionist, and she talks about the whole MAHA movement and RFK Jr. and what is happening there. And she kind of dismantles what everyone is seeing, but what is some of the actual backstory, and reading some of the studies. And so I find a lot of people are moving over to Substack, or we're finding other sources. And we're also not leaning on just one singular source, which I think many of us grew up on. Many of us grew up on, I'm reading the Washington Post, I'm reading the New York Times, I'm reading LA Times, or whatever city you were based in, you relied on that. And now I think so many of us I think the most knowledgeable of us are those that look at multiple sources and try to also read outside the ones that make them feel better, just so we're better informed. And I've also found that a lot of us rely on local news now, because that has become a more trusted source for our news. It's our day to day that we turn to local rather than all the national news, because sometimes the national news isn't covering what we need, particularly for our day to day functions. So for me, my message would be read more than one source, watch more than one source, just so you're better informed, even if at the end of the day, sometimes we do have to take a break for what's going on in the world.
Oh,
And I'm
yes.
all for taking a little mental health break. Just let yourself breathe, take a weekend
Yes.
off. But I
Yes.
still do believe it's important, no matter what is happening in the world. I think it's still better to be informed and still say, hopefully everything will get better, than to
Yes.
just shut our eyes and just pretend.
Well, speaking of overload, okay, we're in an area of personal branding overload. Overload. What's your advice for professionals and creators that are trying to just cut through the noise without losing their authenticity?
So I think it comes back to stop trying to be like everybody else. And
Yes.
I think a lot of times, let's be frank, you never know how the algorithm is working. People think that they've gamed it, but sometimes
Yeah.
it's pure luck and chance that you get found, that your video gets viral, that your website is seen. And sometimes it just has to be a little more of a long game and believing in yourself, kind of find ways to diminish the anxiety and stress of it all. And just, if you, so many of my clients, I say, listen, you are the expert of your own self. I can help you build it, help you become more confident and support you, encourage you, but you know yourself best. I'm just trying to help you expand it and build on it so you can express your stories and connect with others, but it doesn't necessarily happen overnight. And just my client, there's no I don't have imposter syndrome because I've gotten to a point in my career, I am good on camera. I've hosted national TV shows. I've had millions and millions of views on videos expressing certain expertise. I I know when I've hosted a show, how to be gracious to my guests because I want them to shine. I know when I'm working with a team, whether it's on a photo shoot or in a TV studio, we are all collaborators. We are all in this to make a good project, a great completed plan or show episode. So I'm at a point that for me it was really important. And I think this is the reason why I come with this confidence of saying I'm good at what I do, because I want other people to shine. I share my expertise with others. I want to learn from others. It's not about just stepping on a stage or being in a studio. Here I am. I'm fabulous on camera. It's about no. I want to know about the other people I'm with in the room. You do. It's easy to be kind. And from that has built my expertise because I can tell you, I can know about lighting in a studio. I can know about how to work the camera or my body language or be gracious to others and thank people. And from that, I've built that whole expertise that I can say to someone, it's not just about what you're doing on camera, it's everything wrapped around you that gives you better expertise. And then when people come back to me and say, that worked, or if I helped you build your speech so it sounds better, reads better, all of that has built my expertise that I am confident to say I'm good at what I do. And my whole goal is that everyone else that I work with has that same feeling. And it may not happen right away. But when a woman says to me, imposter syndrome, I'm like, no, you're good at what you do. You wouldn't come to me if you didn't believe enough in yourself. You just want to strengthen it. So let's get you to a point that you can say to someone, heck yeah, I'm great. I'm good at what I do, and help you command a room. And even if it's tools of shutting someone down in a conference room where someone's trying to take your idea and how you acknowledge them for that, but you continue talking. All kinds of tools that I can give you so you succeed, that you are heard.
So many powerful gems there. I mean, it's easy to be kind and just approaching things just more confidently. Yeah,
Right.
if people aren't taking notes now, I don't know what they've just missed this entire time because there is a ton of just great advice that you've shared, and this means just so much. So, my last question for you, we
Okay.
talked about this and really you briefly mentioned it earlier about being a part of Step Up. And so Step Up's Legacy Society, which is such a meaningful mentorship role that you have with them. How has mentoring influenced your approach as a media coach and a communicator?
I would say it's taught me even more patience because me working with or mentoring a girl who's 16 and trying to figure out life and what she might want to try, to mentoring someone who's 29 and maybe still trying to navigate and get access and reach other people, or someone who's 23 who's just starting out in their career and kind of just figuring it out, has definitely taught me more patience, has taught me more about people's sensitivities that I have for years now been able to say to someone, everybody feels something a little differently, and we should be sensitive. Just because for you that wouldn't affect you so much, everyone has different circumstances. It could lead back to a childhood trauma, a block. I mean, I had worked with a client who broke down in a session for media training. She broke down crying, and I've had a few people who cried, and obviously I tell people I'm not your therapist. What kind of tools can I give you that can help you in the next circumstance? And they will tell me about something that happened when they were in college, where someone told them they were stupid and shouldn't talk. And that little bit of a block stuck with them all throughout their career, that when they came to me, they realized, oh my God, this is what this was. And we just kind of release it. So I think working with these girls and young women have helped me, based on my clients, what they might face. And maybe if I can help them earlier, they won't even have to feel about breaking free of them. They'll be able to say, no, I don't need to go there. I'm already strong in myself. So the patience, the sensitivity, and just kind of opening up more space for them so they get this chance to explore all these opportunities, and then giving them the direct resources to make it happen has just been incredible.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful. And I love that through this mentorship experience, it has found its way into your leadership style and your approach, and helped to influence it in all of these incredible ways, so that you're constantly keeping that, almost that level of empathy with each person that you're connecting with and you're working with, and just saying, hey, like, I understand you. Now let's work through this. And how can we take this little piece and this use it as our strength and as our superpower, so to speak. I love that so much. Thank you so much for this. Has been incredible. You sharing your wisdom and behind the scenes, from celebrity interviews to coaching, C-suite executives. Your insight is a reminder that communication is both a craft and a calling. Hello. So for those listening who want to elevate their media presence or just become stronger, more intentional communicators, as you've mentioned, you've given us a lot to think about. Where can listeners connect with you?
The easiest place is just to visit my website. So AlisonDeyetteMedia.com, or they can find me at LinkedIn, just Alison Deyette. Sometimes I'm putting up videos on my Instagram. Instagram is just kind of wonky. Sometimes it's just fun stuff, or clips from my TV segments. But yeah, AlisonDeyetteMedia.com, or find me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, be sure to follow Alison's work and check out her latest features in The Strategist, The Wall Street Journal, and more. And as always, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who needs a little media magic in their life. Until next time, keep showing up, keep speaking up, and keep building your brand like a pro. See you next time.